Hello, and thank you for checking out my first instructional video here. My name is Tanner Saylor, and today we're going to be talking about overtones and the Overtone Series, and how to use them. We're going to talk about harmonics a little bit too, and just kind of some extended technique stuff. So, right now, right off the bat, what I'd like to do before we do any playing is I'd just like to tell you a little bit about overtones and harmonics themselves. What is an overtone? Well, any note that you play on any instrument has a series of overtones that resonate, and we can't hear them. All we can hear is obviously one pitch. We don't hear this crazy chord. So we hear this one pitch, but it's the color of the sound that we do hear, and that's brought about from the overtones. So this is what makes a saxophone sound like a saxophone, makes a guitar sound like a guitar, even makes a drum sound like a drum. We don't perceive the overtones like dogs, for instance, will hear this really thick chord whenever you play any note, and they hear all the overtones, which is really kind of weird. But we obviously don't. So we're going to talk a little bit how to use these, how to change the color of your sound by kind of affecting your overtones a little bit, and we're going to talk about how to use them. Now, first off, what an overtone is a harmonic that we are choosing to make come out. However, harmonics themselves are always resonating whenever you play, and that's what we were talking about. So, just real quick, the first thing that I'm going to talk about as far as playing is overtones, and in the different ranges, tongue position to change our overtone series a little bit, kind of make it sound better in a certain range or not. So when we're in the low range, I'd say from about low B flat, low A, obviously if you play Barry, to about D2, which is 1 2 3 1 2 3 with the octave. I would say use an ah kind of tongue. So this is the ta that we're all taught you use when you tongue. Well, use it in low range. Next, when we move to mid range, which is about from E flat to about B3, we're going to use a 2 kind of tongue, or not a tongue, a vowel. We're going to use a 2 shape. And this is going to really help us to get those middle harmonics to speak well, versus ta, which is really certainly for low harmonics. And then lastly, anything above that, and this goes with altissimo, everything above that, we're going to use a T kind of tongue. And the reason that we do this is this makes the high overtones really speak out, and it gets you a nice clear tone in the upper register. And just real quick, I'm gonna probably look pretty silly, but just to show you a bit of a proof of this, hopefully it comes through on the camera acoustically, but I'm gonna do some overtone singing, and I'm just gonna show you how the different vowels kind of help with the overtones. So if we're in a low range, we want low overtones to speak. We're doing a ta. Alright, let me do this. I'm gonna probably look kind of silly, so ta, and hopefully you hear those kind of higher pitches come out. Now we're going to move on to 2. Alright, a little bit higher, not super high. And lastly we're going to do T. And hopefully you hear that. Those are the highest overtones you can get. If you could do somehow tie, you would get a little bit higher, but that would be hard to do on sax. Okay, so now we're going to get into the Overtone series, and we're going to first talk about, so obviously first you want to know how to play your good fundamental frequency. I'm going to start on a low B flat. If you can't go that low, maybe your horn's not in the best shape, maybe even if you can only start on a low D, that's a great place to start, and you're good to start learning. You don't have to be able to play a low B flat. And even if you can honk out a B flat, you can do the overtones. So we're gonna start on B flat 1, which is obviously 1 2 3 1 2 3, second pinky, last pinky. So we're gonna remember to use your tongue here. Alright, so get a nice clear B flat. Now you're ready to move on to your first overtone. And this is actually your second harmonic, if you want to think of it that way. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to play them all the normal way, and then I'm going to play them all the overtone way. So B flat 2, this is an octave. Okay, F2. And you can hear they definitely have a different tonality, they have a different color. We're going to move on, B flat 3. D3. F3. A flat 3. Alright, kind of got a little split tony there, and that will happen. B flat 4. C4. D4. E4. Yeah. And lastly, F4. Alright, that's as high as I'm going to go. That's as high as I am comfortable going on alto. On tenor, on some lower horns, you can probably get a little bit higher, but we're not really focusing on how high we can go with these overtones. I mean, they're definitely a great way to get into altissimo, but what we're really focusing on right now is being able to get those overtones and use them, practice them, not only on low B flat, you know, do them on everything below G, I suggest. I suggest you don't go above G. It does get kind of weird when you get that high. The overtones are really difficult to do, but everything below a G, I suggest you doing. And remember, when I'm doing these overtones, what I'm doing is I'm just fingering that fundamental frequency. I'm not changing my fingering at all to get the overtones. And you're not using octave key. You're doing everything with your embouchure. And really, you know, one thing that you're doing is really think of the pitch, which is why I suggest that you play it the normal way first. As long as you're thinking of that pitch, you can generally get it to speak, just by altering your air column, everything. And you know, use the vowel shapes that I talked about. Those will certainly help, especially when you get to T. As you get higher and higher, you're thinking you're going to change it, the T. So it's not just a T, it's going to be T, T, T. You're changing that tongue position to just get higher and higher and higher. And you're changing your airspeed, and that'll help you a lot. So yeah, try to do these all over the place, from B flat all the way up to F. And you don't have to go as high as I just went. You can stay in the normal register, which if you're on B flat, the highest you'll go is F3. And then on B, you'll go to F sharp 3. And just so you know, yeah, it does, the Overtone series is the same as far as voicings. You always have the same intervals that are your Overtone series. It's just the starting pitch changes, so therefore the overtones change. And if you can go high enough, they do eventually become chromatic. But that's very high. That's what would that be? That would be like 5th octave from the fundamental. So 5th octave B flat would be where the B flat overtones become chromatic, and that's very, very high. So that's the Overtone series itself, and that's how you should practice them. That would kind of be similar to long tones. Kind of hit them once a day. Don't make them the main focus. Certainly, you're not going to say, okay, today I'm going to learn how to do every overtone. No, that's not going to happen, and it definitely takes a lot of practice. But now I'm going to talk about how to use them. First off is they can be used as alternate fingerings in a way. Michael Brecker used these a lot. Check out his recording of Delta City Blues. He uses them all the time in that song. And they have a different tonality, so you can use them as alternate fingerings to kind of get a different sound, a different voice, if you will. And so when you're soloing, you know, if you want to use them this way, let's say I want to do a C overtone, just a regular C, you know. Whatever, something like that. They just kind of give you a different feeling, and they're great to be used as alternate fingerings. Next we'll talk about a interesting technique here. This is one that Colin Stetson uses quite a lot. It's if you haven't heard him, he's a guy who does a lot of circular breathing, pretty much all extended techniques, and he basically just a lot of times will circular breathe over a simple idea and just changes the overtones and maybe uses some multiphonics and other stuff like that. And he also uses these things called split tones, so I'm going to kind of introduce these in the same kind of facet. A split tone is interesting. It's basically like the only way to get a chord on a saxophone. You know, some people say multiphonics are like chords on a saxophone. Well, not exactly. What they do is they roll around from pitch to pitch, and they never actually acoustically sound at the same time. It just kind of sounds like they do because they're so close. It's kind of like a trill in a way, but even faster. And but split tones, the way that they work is they do sound at the same time, but generally one pitch is like much louder than the other, so you can just barely hear another chord tone going on. And let me just try to do one of these real quick. And the way that you do these is generally what I like to do is I do the first overtone or maybe the second overtone, and then try to drop it and meet yourself halfway between two overtones, or the first overtone and the fundamental frequency. And they kind of have this very interesting sound. So let me try to do one here. I like to do this on C. Okay, there was one where you could hear, they both kind of had a decent amount of sound for a little bit. And you can just hear, that's an octave there, so let's try to do it with like a G. Okay, so that's a really weird sounding one, and what you can hear is one of the chord tones is sitting there fluctuating like this, loud, quiet, and then the other one just kind of stays stationary. And so these are kind of better to do when they're held out. They do better sustained. They, you know, let people hear them, let them ring out. And yeah, they're really interesting. They take quite a bit of practice to get. But now I'll talk about the other thing, the Colin Stetson thing I was talking about, where you just do something simplistic, repeat it, and then incorporate overtones with it, which is just by doing overtones of whatever you're fingering. So what I'm going to do here, it's just going to be a triplet idea. It's just going to be C, G, or the first two notes are always going to be C, G. And I'm going to do C, G, F, let's say 8 times. I'm going to do C, G, E 8 times, C, G, D 8 times, and C, G, C 8 times. And so this is just first octave stuff, or well, second octave the C, but so C, G, F, C, G, E, C, G, D, and C, G, low C. And I'm just going to repeat this, and going to do some circular breathing, but really listen for the overtones. That's what we're going for, especially in this video. We're not really going to get into circular breathing here at all, but it's a great way to do it, just because you can repeat this idea for a while with circular breathing. So we'll get on that. Something like that. So yeah, that's an interesting technique you can do, and it's really it's very fun, because you're just doing one idea but changing the overtones, and you get this kind of crazy wonky sound. So that's really cool. So now we'll talk about let's see. Oh, one last one is like an overtone slide, or an overtone gliss, if you will. So basically what we're doing here is, I mean, you can do this in a low range, but as you know, the overtones don't go together super fluently in a low range. So what I'm going to do, and for this is kind of just like a by your ear thing. I mean, you don't know, you probably won't even know what you're fingering when you do it, but you're just hearing what you want to hear, and you're basically just choosing a geometric shape with overtones. So let's say I'm doing something and I want to go up and then back down with an overtone slide. Then it would sound like this. Okay, so that was up and down. Now let's say I want to just be up, down, up, down, up, down, you know, something just all over the place, kind of crazy. Then it would sound like this. Okay, so that's another thing you can do with overtones. And like I said, this is really for like a super high energy moment. You're picking it up, and then you just want to be like, you know, something crazy with this overtone slide. That's really where you use it there. So yeah, all these techniques can be incorporated together. I guess I'll do one last thing trying to do that. So let's just start. Just something like that. So, so those are all that I'm going to talk about today. So basically, to practice these, like I said, do them as long tones, maybe 20 minutes a day, or 20 minutes every time you practice, even if you can't hit it every day. Just kind of something on the back burner that you gradually get better at. They're not going to be your main focus, but they're a great technique to try to do. So thank you for checking this out, and if you have any suggestions, or if you'd like to hear about anything else, maybe if you'd like to see a video on circular breathing or something, just let me know down below.